to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to another episode of A Well-Designed Business. Big treat today. Lori Weitzner is with me. I know, it's very exciting. Now, before I get to the show, I want to tell you, though, that I am going to High Point Market next month. This is April 2018 we're talking about. And Cravat Inc. and My Doma Studio together are throwing a book signing party. Yes, they are. So if you are going to be at High Point Market, please join us on Monday, April 16th at 1 p.m. in the Cravat showroom. They are going to put out a beautiful lunch for us in their showroom, and we will all get to talk and hang out and, just meet each other and everything else. It's going to be so much fun. It's sort of like the birthday party we just had, but now we're going to do it at High Point. So if you've already purchased your book, please bring it with you. I'd love to meet you in person, ask you about your business, and sign the book for you. If you haven't purchased it yet and you want to, you can certainly do that. You can just go to luannigara.com/book. Okay, now on to today's show. I'm very happy to introduce you to Lori. If you've spent any time in this industry, then you're probably familiar with Lori, the principal and creative director of Lori Weitzner Design Incorporated. Her career spans 30 years. She is internationally known for her contributions to the world of textiles and wall coverings under the brand Weitzner, which has been sold through prestigious houses like Sacco, Larson, and Pollock. Or you may be familiar with her through her trims which are available through Samuel & Sons, or maybe even her rugs, the designs for West Elm, or her paper designs for Papyrus. And I'm just going to say, if all of this talent and this accomplishment isn't enough, wait till you meet her. Lori is an absolute sweetheart of a person. In this interview, she shares many of the big moments that shaped her career and the choices that she has made throughout her career. And if you know me and you listen to the show, you know that I love all of the interviews, but I especially love these interviews because I love to learn the windy road and the pivotal moments that super, super successful people have taken to get where they are. And so that's what this is about today, and it's a lot of fun. The other news is her newest endeavor on top of all of this is her book, Ode to Color, the 10 Essential Palettes of Living and Design. Lori has a very unique perspective on the uses and significance of color in design, and we talk about this today on the show too. Lori has developed, as a complement to the book, the Ode to Color Analysis. It's a practical guide on how to find one's color world. And you'll hear in the show, I took the test, and guess what Lori said? Even without knowing me, she said the results show that I would benefit greatly from a home environment where the colors are calm and grounded because my outside world is likely very busy and hectic. Well, I'm just going to say, you know what my mom would say about that? Well, even Ray Charles can see that. So it just goes to show you her Ode to Color Analysis is pretty spot on. It was fun and it was interesting to take. You can take the test yourself at LoriWeitzner.com. That's LoriWeitzner.com, where you can take the test and you can get her book as well. Alrighty, so I am looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. Hi, Lori. Thank you so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi.
So, Lori, I'm like fangirling here a little bit because, you're an extremely accomplished woman. And I want to share with everybody that we've been chatting off air a little bit for a few minutes before the interview started. And you are as gracious and as sweet as you are accomplished. And so I'm looking forward to this.
Well, I've been looking forward to it as well. So thank you.
Yeah, so I'm a little like, where do I start? Because there's so much to talk about, and the textiles and the wall coverings and everything that you design, and I mean, really to run down the accomplishments. But I guess my brain goes to, I'm always curious about. It's funny. I was about to say I'm always curious about how somebody got their start, but everybody that listens to the show knows darn well that's not exactly true. Usually I say, don't tell me that you've been moving furniture since you're 10 years old, because everybody does that. Like, I know you wanted to be a designer since you were a baby, right? But the thing is, but when I speak with somebody that has created a company of the width and the breadth of yours, then I am interested in the moments. If anybody has heard the show with Vanessa De Leon, she knew as a young girl at 20 years old, she said it flat out, I want to create a lifestyle brand. I want to be known as the Latina Martha Stewart. And then I, had a conversation with Candace Olson, and she told how completely by accident she ended up on camera on a project that the on-air personality, I don't know, missed a plane or was sick that day or something. And she went on camera to describe her own project, and they said, hey, you are amazing. Let's make a TV show out of you. So when I talk with somebody with your level of accomplishment, I sort of do want to know where was the chicken and the egg. So do you have a moment were you like a baby textile designer and thought, oh, I want to be this amazing woman that is in museums and everything else? Or tell us a little bit about that, Laura.
I love that question, first of all. There are a few moments that stand out, but the first is when I was quite young, about 9 years old or so. I loved doing fashion designs, and I thought I was actually going to be a fashion designer. And I used to actually pretend I was sick so I could stay home from school, stay in bed, and do sketches of ladies wearing these clothes. And what I noticed more recently when I look back to these sketchbooks, because I still have a lot of these drawings, is that I was more focused on the patterns within the dresses than I was the actual silhouettes, which should have been a little hint towards pattern design versus fashion design. But that was sort of the very beginnings. And then I knew I wanted to be some kind of artist. So I went to Syracuse University, and I decided I was going to major in painting and become a painter. And my professor, Mr. Fricky, who's no longer alive, who was a very mean teacher, or I thought so at the time, pulled me aside and he said, how are you going to make a living when you get out of school? And I said, I'm going to be a painter. And he said, yeah, but how are you going to make a living? And I said, I'm going to be a painter. And he basically said, number one, you're not going to make a living as a painter, even if you were a good painter. I know. Isn't that heartbreaking? He said, but you're not even good enough.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. And then his next sentence was, but you should switch your major and become a textile designer because you have a really good sense of color and composition. And I said, okay, what's textile designer? Because I had no idea. But luckily, Syracuse had a very strong design school with lots of majors in design, not just fine arts. And they did have a textile design major, and I switched my major. And that was a big moment, big moment. And now and forevermore, even though he's long gone, I honor him for telling me the truth and setting me on my path. Whether I liked what he said or not at the time, I have never looked back since and craved or wished that I had become a fine artist.
Well, I guess not every, but most teachers probably have a moment like that with their students, whether they're designers or they're engineers or whatever it would be, where you see another level of talent in somebody that actually has the potential to be something, but you have to tell them, you're in the wrong lane, right? And so it's a risk for a teacher, because a lot of students, you're kids, you're 20 years old with looking, just be in a puddle of, tears and not really stand up and make the move. So very interesting. That's interesting. So, and also too, I understand that, like, well, okay, what is textile design? It's like,
well, most people don't know what we do. Interior designers, everybody knows, everybody understands. Textile designers kind of are under the radar a little bit until you sort of bring to people's attention, everything you look at, you walk on, you sit on, you clothe with, all of it requires pattern and texture and color in some way, shape, or form. And we do that, but people don't really think about it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't remember if Mulaney B, I don't know if do you know Mulaney B? She's a New York City surface designer, and she's got a tile line. I want to say she definitely has a rug line. I want to say a wallpaper line. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I feel like she had a similar story. And I don't know if it was because, I don't remember if it was because a professor looked at her and said, hello, sweetie, wake up and smell the coffee, but I do remember it was in school that she switched to surface design, and she started to do that stuff, and it was like a whole world opened up to her, and she was,
yeah.
So okay, so that's interesting. Now I read that there was another moment, and so I might be jumping, and if there's things that we should kind of talk about in between, go right ahead and correct me. But I also read there was another moment where you had an opportunity from Jack Lenore Larson, but were you working out in the world at that point? So catch us up to that.
Yeah, so that was a huge moment. But there was also another, I would say, if I had to like track my life by moments, there was one big moment before that. And that big moment was I got out of school and I got a job at a bedding company. And I had a really innovative portfolio because I learned how to hand paint on silk and do all these really beautiful things, I felt, but they were quite contemporary for the time. At the time, the market was very traditional. It was chintz and Ralph Lauren, cabbage roses. And I wasn't really doing that. And I went to this bedding company. They hired me because of my portfolio that was innovative, but then every day they had me doing little Laura Ashley knockoffs. Do you remember little Laura Ashley flowers?
I do. We're talking early 80s. No, we're talking early 80s.
Everybody knows how old I am out there. That's so bad. Okay, yeah.
Well, how old we are. We're in your same boat there. So, and I remember it too. It was like the height of Waverly and, the purple and the green flowers together, right?
So I was sitting every day painting these little flowers, and it was just not for me. So I quit without having another job after a year. My parents were really not happy about it. They were like, you don't have another job. You don't have medical insurance. What are you doing? And I decided to put a portfolio together of designs, innovative designs, and sign up for a trade show in Lille, France.
Wow.
And bring my designs to France and see if I could sell them. It was a 3-day trade show. I spoke broken French, but it was enough to get by. Evidently, I was the only American who had ever done this show at that time. It's since, of course, changed. It was called Indigo, which is actually indigo in English. And I basically brought 48 designs with me, and I sold all 48 in those 3 days. And I sold them to companies that were making everything from fabric for interiors to bedding to patterns for ceramic to napery, any stationery, and it was amazing. And through that, met all these European companies that came to buy designs. And one of them was a Swiss company who then invited me if I ever was in the area to come and visit the mill, and where I know happened to be in Zurich, and work with them. And I went back home for a little while, and I thought, my life is no longer here in New York. I want to go to Europe. That's where the market is. It's much more contemporary. There was nothing going on in the States. So I went back to Europe, and I started in Milan, and a friend of mine lent me an apartment to stay in. I mean, this is all so serendipitous and so much. We talk about all these success stories, but so much of it is also just luck. Right. They let me stay in this apartment because I didn't have any money except for the money from the designs I sold. And I ended up meeting with the Massonis and doing work with them. And then once you design for Massoni, you can call other people and say, hi, my name is Lori Weitzner. Can I come show you my designs? I'm designing for Massoni. And they're like, oh, okay. And so I started to build a clientele in Italy. And I stayed there for 6 months. And in that period, I design-wise flourished and bloomed, but socially I was very lonely. Um, it was hard to meet people. Milan is a very interesting place, but very insular. And if you don't speak the language, it's difficult. And I would take the train many days up to Como because that's where all the silk mills were and where I would sell a lot more of my design. So I would basically have very lonely days. It sounds glamorous, but it wasn't.
Right.
And so I just remembered while I was in Milan about that guy in Switzerland who had the bedding company and said, if you're ever in the neighborhood, and I picked up the phone, the dial phone, I'll never forget, because in those days we didn't have cell phones.
No.
These were ancient. Anyway, I called and I said, do you remember me? My name is Lori Weitzner. You bought some of my designs for bedding. And he said, yes. I said, I'm in Milan and I was going to go back to New York, but if you want, maybe I could come to you. And he said, sure. And I ended up going there, which became a relationship business-wise that lasted 16 years, where I would go every January for 6 weeks and design bedding in their mill.
Wow.
And till this day, they are my dearest friends, probably ever. And we're, of course, in touch all the time. So that was really a huge moment, huge risk. Probably if I had thought through it beforehand, I never would have done it.
Right.
But when you're young, and you don't think things through too much, it's sometimes a good thing.
Right.
So I did this, which led to the next, which led to the next, and then led to this, to that. But finally, I had to come back to New York because I was actually really homesick. I didn't meet the Italian that I wanted to fall in love with.
Your mother said, thank God, because then you would have never have come home.
That's true. That's actually very true.
Right.
So I came back to New York, and that's when the big break happened with Jack Larson.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions before we get to the thing I thought I wanted to know. So here's the thing. I hear you that there is a certain amount of youthful, cavalierness almost that just says, okay, I'm going to do this, that was required to take this risk. But my question is in the actual doing of it. When you went to this Indigo show, this trade show, I mean, I think about practical things like, how did you know about the show? How did you know what to sell your patterns for? Like, what did you, because it's one thing, I read about the show in AD or I read about the show in a trade bag, but the technical, I'm not, it doesn't bother me getting on a plane and going at 22 years old. That part
Right.
I'm down with. But I would be like, well, if somebody wants to buy something, do I sell it for $10 or $10,000? Like, how how did you know that part that you could make 48 deals in one weekend? That's insanity.
Well, first of all, I didn't know. That's a really, really good question, though, because at the same time that I bit the bullet and did these crazy things, I also made a ton of mistakes that probably I don't talk about as much. So here's one little example. I learned about this trade show from a fellow designer who spent half her time in France and half her time here and just happened to know about it. So then I looked into it and I got information on it. I wrote to the trade fair that organized it. The address on the organizers was the address I thought was where the trade fair was in Lille, France. And so I booked a motel, not a hotel because I couldn't afford it. And I, kind of got there somehow. And I show up to set up the fair the day before. And I realized that I'm staying at the hotel next to where I thought the fair was, but it's only next to the offices of the organizers. And the actual fair is an hour away by train. So I couldn't afford a taxi in those days. I had no money.
Right.
So what I did was I had to take a train at 6 a.m. for those 3 days of that trade fair, an hour away, where I had to set up this booth without knowing anything, speaking broken French, trying to get the guy to fix the light above to aim at my artwork. I mean, it was not beautiful. It was not seamless. I made lots of mistakes, but here's the secret. I also made lots of friends. And those friends, those other co-exhibitors, really opened their arms to me. They saw that I kind of didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was the only American. I barely spoke French. They all helped me. They helped me figure out what to price my designs at. They helped me when I had to go to the bathroom. I mean, most of these exhibitors were two. I was my only one. What happens when I need a bite to eat or I have to go to the bathroom and someone comes, so I made friends and that saved me. And they advised me, which is why till this day, I try my best. I hope my best that I do that for other people coming up. And So
that's amazing, because that's the thing. You get into the thick of a conversation, because I have to say, many times a young designer listening to a program like this, they would hear your story and maybe they wouldn't even have the thought that I had, like, how did you know how to price it? They would just be like, oh my goodness, how do I get on a thing and do it? But to know that, like you just said, it really was a huge challenge. It wasn't just, hey, I went there and sold 48 of my designs, right?
No, right.
Yes.
And we, there was no internet.
I was just going to say, that's the other thing. Right now, I would have just Googled, what should I sell my designs for at a trade fair?
Exactly.
But you couldn't do that. Then even you said you wrote a letter to them. It's like, what?
I wrote a telex.
Right? It's so
and
funny.
I don't even feel that old, but
I know.
telex. Like the people, my lovely ladies who work with you in the studio here, they probably don't even know what telex is.
They have to look it
up. They
up.
probably don't even know what faxes are. Nobody's even faxing these days. But you know what? I figured it out. Slowly. I made lots of mistakes. I continue to make mistakes. I do think mistakes are really good. I was watching the other night, I'm addicted to this Spanish soap opera called Velvet, and there's this fashion designer in it, and he said something last night in the show that resonated. He said to someone, we don't make mistakes, we just change our mind. And I kind of like that. I feel like I don't like to call anything a mistake. It's either we change our mind or we
learned a lesson, right?
Learned a lesson.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. I love it. I think it's awesome. I think and I just love to know all the details of it, because it is true. Every one of us that has been, through these many years in business, like the two of us have, you do have these things, and you look back and you're like, that was pretty crazy time right there. But
pretty crazy.
Exactly.
I gave up. I don't know how many of your listeners know this, but to have a rent stabilized apartment in New York City was like huge, unbelievable thing. And I actually gave it up to go to Europe.
Oh yeah.
Which was crazy. And now I'm like, can't believe I ever did that.
Right.
But you do those. I don't even know what drives you, because I was actually quite shy and not the most secure, confident young person. So I don't even know what drove me. Like,
well, it sounds like it was probably a belief in your art, and I'm like, I can see or hear that you could have been, as you say, possibly shy or not such a confident young person. But it sounds like, I mean, look, anybody that, picks up and goes to France, doesn't know anybody, with their little portfolio in tow, has got to believe in their work, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's the best point, is that I was not, as a person, perhaps shy and not so self-confident, but I was always confident in the work. I always believed in it. And even in this period where everything was so traditional here in the U.S., I knew there was a home, there was a space and a place for the work that I wanted to be doing. And you're right. I never really second guessed that. So that's
it right there. That's the thing right there. That's the thing that makes people different. You just said it. I knew, even though there wasn't a market for it here, there was a place for it. I knew what I was doing belonged out in the world. That's that little thing in there that comes inside and is inside of somebody that goes on to create what you've created. I know it to be true. That's awesome. I love it. That's so exciting. So now you go and you get this opportunity with Jack Lenore Larson. Is that what happens next?
So I came back from Europe and I set up shop. I set up a design studio with just me.
Okay.
I rented a small space from a graphic design studio. I paid, it was a big deal for me. It was $330 a month. I remember up until that point and before Europe, it was just whatever work out of the apartment I was doing. So that started me on my way, and I was selling designs for different applications. Estee Lauder would buy my designs for their packaging, and I was still continuing to do the Swiss company, freelance, and different stuff like that. But the market was starting to open up, and Jack Larson was the god of textile designers, and he still is. He's probably the god of not just textile designers, but designers in general and craftspeople. And he was one of the few who was doing timeless contemporary textiles. And I coveted him and his work. I had tried to meet him at other times and I never had success. But here I am back after some minor success in Europe. And I had a picture of a design that I did for a European company in a magazine next to one of his. So I ripped it out of the magazine and I sent him a letter. Dear Mr. Larson, as you can see, I'm next to you in print. I would love the chance to be next to you in person. Can I come meet you? And I got a call right away from Crystal, his secretary, and said, Mr. Larson will be happy to meet you.
Yeah.
And that was my really big break. And I will never forget my meeting with him. That first time we sat in his office and he was chewing on a little bit of yarn. I think he he's such a textile man that he was just sort of had these little fibers, and he was listening a lot and not talking very much. And I showed him my portfolio and he was impressed with it. And that was the end of that meeting. He didn't say, come work for me or anything, but it was a really lovely moment. And then I think it might have been, my timing might be a little off, but it might have been about 6 months later where the call came in again from him. They were looking for a creative director. And I thought, oh my God, creative director of Larson. Okay, what do I do? I've just opened my studio, taken a space for $330 a month.
Whoa.
I'm selling designs to Estee Lauder and other places. But this is a call from Jack Larson. What do I do? He wants to hire me. What do I do? And this is, again, the theme of, having people you can get support and advice from. I had lunch with a girlfriend, and she said, what do you want? If you could do anything. And this is kind of an important message I like to say, and I'll say it here, and hopefully your listeners will hear this. It's the idea of going for what you want, not what you think is possible. Because when she asked me what I wanted, it was very easy to answer. I said, oh, well, what I want, if I could have anything, but I know I can't have this because he wouldn't accept this. That's okay, Lori. What is it you want? Well, I'd like to do collections for Jack, but not work for him full time. I'd like to still keep my studio. I'd like to continue designing other types of products and packaging, but just do fabric for him. And I'd like to maybe go down there 2 days, 3 days a week. I'd like my name on the collections. I'd like ads with my name on them. Oh, you know what? And I'd like to travel the world promoting it.
Whoa.
And then, that was our lunch. And she just looked at me and said, what do you have to lose?
Right.
Go for it. And I was like, no, he'll never go for that.
Oh my God.
Go for it, Lori. Just try it. So I get all, meditated that morning.
Stand in the mirror, look at your power pose.
trying to decide what color to wear.
Right. Got to pick the perfect outfit. This one looks power. This one looks aggressive. This one looks confident. This one looks.
By the way, I still remember what I wore that day.
I'm
which was
sure.
Just on a side note. And I go in, and Jack is a man of few words, and he's sitting there and I'm sitting there, and I go, Jack, here's what I really want to do. Let me propose this. And I'm going on and on and on, and I'm telling him the whole thing, and I just go for it, and I'm adding this and adding that, and he's not saying anything. And I just keep talking because I'm one of those people that I don't like silence. Like, I'll fill the air with stupid words than rather silence. And then there's really nothing else to say. So I just stop and I look at him, and I swear he just looks at me, and in his Jack voice says, that sounds fine, Lori. And that was it. And the rest is history, as they say.
Oh my God.
He is a mentor. He put me on the map. He allowed so graciously to put my name next to his, in giving me also autonomy and freedom in the collections I did for him. And I will be grateful to him forever and ever.
It's remarkable. How old were you about at this point?
This would have been about 80, 90. Oh God, you're asking me a hard question here.
Well, I'm just trying to get a sense of, are you in your 20s still, or are you in your 30s? That's really all I'm wondering.
I think I'm in my very late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah. And the only reason I ask is because that just adds to the wonderment of it, the accomplishment of it. Because, look, when you get to your mid to late 30s and you go into a meeting like that, even if you're not completely prepared. Like even if you're not going to run it like, a textbook negotiation meeting, right? Like you're just like going to go in there and say everything you want and then just keep talking until you can't speak anymore. I mean, that's textbook no, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you do that in your, mid to late 30s, it's sort of like, I've got a little bit under my belt and I'm entitled to ask for this. Okay. When you do it in your late 20s and early 30s, you were still in, everybody is always entitled to ask for what they want. Like your friend said, only anybody can do is say no. But I think it takes a lot more courage to do it then. And you're right.
I'll tell you something else. I mean, I'll share a little bit of a personal thing. I just remembered as you were talking that it was 93 when the first collection I did for him called Simply Grand was launched. And it coincided with, I was married brief for just 2 years during that period, and it was not a good decision. It wasn't a good thing. And I made the decision to get out of that at exactly the same moment, and I mean month, that we launched Simply Grand for Larson. And I think that it was a very important personal and professional moment coinciding, which was about no longer compromising or settling, going for what you want in every way and believing that you deserve it and that it will all work out okay. So yes, it was 93 when that first collection launched. And it was a very important moment also because I traveled the country as I had asked, and I did trunk shows. I didn't even know what a trunk show was, but I learned, and I did it in every major market, met so many of the most amazing interior designers that I still am in touch with today, many of them big icons in the industry, and watched their work over the years, and very grateful to them for using my products. And so it was also a time of reflection. I would be out all day selling, and then I'd be in my hotel at night, and it just was a very important growth moment for me in every way.
I can picture it, and I can picture your brain almost like taking a right turn and going, you know what?
Yes.
I can do this, and I should do it, and I don't have to be apologizing for doing it. I'm entitled, and I earned it, and it's okay. It's okay to do and be who you want to be, right?
Right.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. It is. And the thing is, what's funny is, for your designer out there listening that's listened to the show for a long time, this is an inspirational story, no question. But it comes down to, I don't care if we're talking about the client that you're working with, if it's going good or not. You always start with why. Like your friend said, what do you want? What if you could do? I just listened to a Facebook Live with Nancy Ganskoffer, who is a business coach that's been on the show. And she literally said that she just had a one-on-one coaching client where she said to the client, write down everything you want to do. Write down everything you want to achieve. Don't edit it. Don't say, like you said, what do you want, not what's just possible.
Exactly.
Right? Don't decide that it can't happen. That's not logical. That's not possible. Just do it, right?
Just do it. Go for it. Go for what you want, not what you think is possible.
Right.
I have it written down and put on my bulletin board.
I love it. I have a book out too, and in the one chapter in the book, it addresses this exact same thing. It's just figure out what you want, and don't worry about how the universe, could possibly figure this out. Just get clear, because then you, like your friend said, just ask.
Just ask. And I like what Nancy said about writing down. Because somehow when you write it down, it becomes more real than if it's just in your head.
Yes.
Of what your goals may be, or what your wishes or desires or dreams are. Yeah.
Exactly. And
what's
also
the worst that can happen?
Right. And the thing that I love about having it on a vision board or written down or whatever is because I don't know, tell me if you've experienced this. There's times when I've written something down that I want to achieve or want to accomplish or want to do. And it could be weeks or months later, and working on something, an opportunity happens, a conversation happens, and I'll look over at the vision board. I'll be like, oh my goodness, like That's happening now. Like,
Yeah.
you almost, you put so much out into the universe that you want to manifest, that you want to create. And then all of a sudden you're like in the middle of, for me, I'll find myself in the middle of evaluating an opportunity or a decision or something. And I'll be like, oh, wait, no, this is going right down that road. Yes, come on, let's do it.
Exactly.
Oh, so inspirational. So good. All right. So now you have your company and you are freelancing and you still are growing your own individual brand, and you go on and you have developed wallpaper and fabrics, and they come to be displayed in the Smithsonian and the Cooper Hewitt and all of these things. Anything around this next level of opportunity that you've created for yourself that you want to share about those experiences?
Well, I will say that the next big moment after the whole amazing journey with Jack, I then that company got sold, and I went to design for 12 years for an amazing European company called Sacco. And at the same time that I was doing that, it was only fabric, and then I was maintaining my other projects on the side, but I had this urge to do wall covering, and I wanted to do it in a different way than the typical just printed wallpaper. And I felt that there was innovation and a conversation to be had about innovative materials for the wall. So I asked, in my typical way of working, I asked companies if they wanted me to design this idea for them, and none of them went for it. And in fact, some of them stupidly said, oh, wall coverings, that's not going to be that's not a seller. Little did they know. Right. Anyway, so again came a friend and a lunch. A lot happens with friends at lunches. And I was telling them I was disappointed that I wasn't finding someone to help make this happen. And he said, do it yourself. I'm like, what do you mean do it myself? He goes, just start a business, get a loan, and do it yourself. And I was like, oh, I never thought of that.
Oh, okay. So I'm a grown-up. I could do that, right?
Yes. So I went to the bank, JP Morgan, and they were having a women in your own special. Women in business in your own special, you could get $100,000 revolving credit loan in 24 hours.
No way.
So I started Weitzner on a $100,000 revolving credit loan that JP Morgan Chase got to me. This was obviously pre-2008.
Yes.
It was easier to get loans than it is now, but it started me on my way. I then enlisted a friend to help me write a business plan. I'd never written a business plan in my life. I did do the business plan incorrectly. We talk about mistakes we made. I based my inventory needs on the average fabric order, which is 8 to 12 yards, by the way, instead of the average wall covering order, which is 30 to 40 yards.
Whoa.
Because unless you're doing a powder room, most wall covering is doing a whole room, and it's a lot more yardage. So I ran out of, the good news is the company took off right away. The bad news is I didn't have enough money for maintaining proper stock levels. I went back to Chase, or JP Morgan at the time, and they declined any further loan for me. So the next step was Florence, my mom, who then gave the rest of the money. So I honor her as very much for helping get Weitzner going. So I'm very proud to say that this beautiful company that makes, I think wonderful products, wall covering fabric now as well, was started on a $100,000 loan from the bank.
Wow. It's even that right there. It's one thing to have a lunch with a friend who puts a seed in your head and you make a decision and you go, but you sign the line on $100,000. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. It's a big deal now, let alone a big deal then. Do you know what I'm saying? $100,000 is $100,000.
I know, but again, it's like something.
You believed in yourself.
I guess, I must have, because I didn't think twice about that. I just I did it. And then there were challenges for me, and this is about a designer who's running a business, and I don't know about I've listened to a number of your other podcasts, and I think that's always a challenge with a creative person when you're also faced with running a business, how to get that balance right, because the next 6 years Weitzner grew so beautifully, but at an expense. And the expense was me having to do much more of the business than the creative, which ultimately was not satisfying enough for me. And so what I ended up doing, which was the next kind of moment, was I ended up merging Weitzner with a company called Pollock and Associates, which makes fabrics, because they they were, first of all, very lovely people. They got what I was doing, and they also are brilliant operationally. And I needed brilliant operations so that I never had to think about it again. And I could basically go back to doing what I do best, which is creating product and, marketing and coloring and all of that. So that was another next step journey for me. And also, by doing that with them, it allotted me more space to also do the other things that I was missing and loved, like designing rugs or dinnerware or packaging and so on and so forth.
It's awesome that you brought that up, Lori, because we say it all the time. I mean, one time I was talking to somebody and they were thinking about going out on their own, and they had a really terrific job with an interior design firm, loving what they're doing, thinking about going on their own. And I asked the designer why. Right? Why? Tell me why you want to go out on your own. And part of the answer revolved around, well, I'm doing all this beautiful design, but their name is on it. I'm not, you know what I mean? And I said, we're going to need a little bit more than that, because if you go out on your own, your name is going to be on it, but you're going to do a heck of a lot less designing. You know what I mean? So if it's just about your name being on it, then let's explore that. But if it's because you're so passionate about your design and that's what you love to do, and at the end of the day, and by the way, you'd love to have your name, which is more important. And so for you came to this moment 6 years in where you realize, this is awesome, this company, and I'm putting all this beautiful product in the world, but you're doing less of the beautiful product than you are of the business, and it's not your superpower, right?
No, right. And I got to tell you, when 3 months into the merger, once it happened, my 2 daughters said, "Mommy, you're not tired anymore."
Right. Because now I work 12 hours a day doing what I want instead of 12 hours designing and another 4 working on the business.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's the truth. Yes.
So that was that's been a wonderful journey, and with that came the ability, as much as I love designing for Jack Larson and for Sacco, finally I could do my own fabric line, because part of the deal with Pollock was they would also invest in not just growing the wall covering more, but allowing me to do my own fabric line as well.
I love it.
So it's worked out really very nicely.
Mm-hmm. And I like that at each of these moments that you've described, all of the uncertainty that surrounded each of the moments, the one thing that was constant was your belief in yourself. And even if it wasn't an out loud, I can hear that sometimes it wasn't, I can do this. And it was more just this inner quiet, okay, this is what's important to me right now. What's important to me is going out on my own, and I'm going to get a loan, and not overthinking it, not underthinking it, but just that almost listening to the inner voice that knows that you are meant to do this, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can call it intuition, you can call it fate, you can call it luck, you could call it belief in having something you need to say, or it's all of the above. It's all of it. But certainly there was, and still is, I still have a long way to go, so much that I want to say in the world of materials and products and color. And it's not just to create something beautiful, but also something that actually resonates with people and incites and ignites the senses in people. And if I can do that, whether it's in a fabric or a rug or a card or a whatever, that makes me really happy.
It's so remarkable. I love it. I want to just share a little story with you, because Kimberly, the interior designer that works for me, will literally chop my head off if I don't tell you about this. But she had the opportunity, Window Works had the opportunity to design a model apartment for a company here in New Jersey, at the time called Roseland Property. Now they've been acquired by Matt Calley. And it's a beautiful high-rise apartment on the waterfront. It's called the Miracle Mile, I don't know, something mile over Port Imperial Boulevard. And she designed this model home, and she used your wall covering, Noteworthy, in the powder bath. And when I tell you that she did a remarkable job on this apartment, and everything in it was beautiful. But two things. Number one, all of the people that came through it, the salespeople for the rental units would say that everybody commented on that. But the more significant thing was that the CEO of the company at the time was very particular in the design, and it was not uncommon for him to come through a finished apartment or a finished lobby or a finished clubhouse area in one of his buildings at, prior to the unveiling the week or two before, and look at any of the designers and say, yeah, that floor is going to have to come out, or that wallpaper is going to have to come out. And when he walked through this apartment, what his comment was, I love the powder bath.
That's great. Well, that's newsworthy, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry, newsworthy.
No, that's
yes.
Okay. It's so special. That is all made from recycled newspaper that gets gathered from all over the world. It gets stripped and made into a kind of a yarn, and then hand woven on looms, and then paper backed and put in those environments. No one yard is alike, because
right.
Obviously it depends what the newspaper is. And we've sold it everywhere from Google headquarters to Will Ferrell's apartment. Wow. To the Cooper Hewitt Permanent Collection has it, actually.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I just thought it is absolutely a beautiful paper. I had no idea that it actually was the way you just described that, the manufacturing process. That's incredible.
It's very cool. We work with artisans all over the world. A lot of our products are done that way. And I'm very proud to say we develop products with, the last count was 66 different either mills or artisans, communities. And what is especially cool is that the end use, like I said, it gets put into Google or Wynn Hotels or Saks Fifth Avenue, but yet it's handmade, and it's supporting beautiful communities around the world to do their craft. So I'm very excited about that, and Newsworthy is one of those products.
Awesome. I love it. You're right. It's layers of satisfaction in there, not just the finished product, but the whole, what it's doing for the different, like you said, the skilled artists and talented people that would normally be bypassed for mass-produced product like this. You know what I mean? Not mass-produced, but mass-available. It was really the way to, right, exactly. So cool. So now, we're at the present day here a little bit, and you have a new book out, Ode to Color, the 10 Essential Palettes for Living in Design. So it's not enough to do all this other stuff. We have to write books and things too, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about this project, Lori.
Oh my. Well, a labor of love. And I wanted to do a book for a very, very long time. And I tried a lot. And this is another lesson. Like, if you don't succeed at first, try again. I know I didn't make that quote up, but it might have been for 12 years now, 14 years I've been wanting to do a book, and I've had different concepts for the book, and each time I have a graphic designer that I hire, and I pay him a lot of money to design very pretty graphic book spreads, and then I take them around and I get nothing. No bites, nothing. So I then pause, put them aside, say, no, I guess I'm not meant to write a book. And then a few years back, I tried again. And it was based on a talk that I was giving called the 10 Essential, no, that's the name of my book. It was called, what is it called? Oh, I know. It was called the 10 Top Inspirations. So I did like a top 10 list. And I created it because people always ask me, where do you get your inspiration? So I thought, okay, I'll tell them. So I pitched it to a few people. And then I was talking to a girlfriend, and she said, I have a friend who's an editor at HarperCollins, and she's very supportive and very helpful, and she loves artists and designers. Why don't you go talk to her? She'll give you advice. She'll tell you what you should do and who maybe you should go pitch it to. So I call this woman, Liz, and she invites me to Harper, and I go there with my proposal. She talks to me for an hour, and then she doesn't say much except, I want to come see your studio. So she comes to my studio, which is here in Chelsea, New York, and I have a small space, but it's a nice space. It's all white, and I think it's inspiring. And she's talking for 2 hours to me, and at the end of the 2 hours, she says, Lori, I want to do a book with you. And I almost fell off my chair just then, because I never expected that. And HarperCollins, oh my God. Right? She said, but this book you're proposing, this is not the book. And here's where I say I don't want to be one of these people that just preaches, but this was another really good lesson for me. She said, you're trying to write the book of what you think people want to read. I want you to try and write the book of what you want to say. So she gave me permission because she was right. And I think designers have that sometimes because we always have to work with a client, that we're always trying to please, that we're compromising. And she said, what do you want to say? Forget what you think will be successful out there. Just go internal. Come back in a month, but don't give me another fancy book proposal, please. So what do you do? What do I do? So I was froze for a few days, and then I went to Blick, our local art store, and I picked out a box, and it was a purple box. I brought it to the studio, and I just for the next month started throwing different things in this box, swatches of fabric, little stone samples. I started to write some poems. I put in favorite quotes. I started to cut and paste things. I started to write little stories about my time in Italy, working with Missoni, for example, or my experience with Jack, for example. And at the end of this month, all of this stuff organized itself by accident or not, by color. And that's when I realized, and that was my other really big moment, is that actually my first language is not English. My first language is color. And that everything I do and see starts really with that. And in fact, if I could communicate with color instead of words, I'd probably do a lot better. And so they became these 10 color stories or color worlds. And I put the box in the mail and I sent it to her because it was so personal that I was almost embarrassed to bring it in person. I did not hear from her for 3 months.
Oh my goodness.
Right? And it's like when you pitch a job and you don't hear back, you just think they hated it.
Well, so right. And that was, like you said, so personal. You're thinking, wait, you asked me, here's what I would be doing. I would be like, you said not to send a professional proposal. Now I did what I really felt from my heart, and it's like crickets? Like, come on.
That's sort of what I was feeling. And I thought what I thought then was she hates it, but she's nice, so she doesn't want to hurt my feelings. So I finally had the courage to email her, and I emailed her and I said, Liz, I can come pick up the box anytime. Don't worry if you didn't like it. And she writes me back right away and says, no, I didn't even have a chance to look at it. It's been sitting on my chair for all these months. I've been on deadline. I promise I'll look at it this weekend and I'll get back to you right away. So I had another reprieve, and then I didn't hear from her again for like a month. And all of a sudden, one day, popping up on my email, you never know what's going to pop up on your email, popping up on my email, all it says is, hey, doll, do you want to write a book because we want to publish it, ! So I showed it to my friend I was with, and I said, what does this mean? And she just started laughing. She's like, what do you mean? What does this mean? They want to publish your book. I'm like, really? I couldn't believe it. I mean, basically, I couldn't believe it. And that was how Ode to Color happened. And then the next year was a very intensive, beautiful process with a very good girlfriend of mine, Dorothy Mitchell, who helped me write it. She would take my gobbledygook and make it sound so much more eloquent than I could ever sound on my own. And together, those weekly sessions were just so special and sacred. And, I still had a day job, so I kind of had to make it all work. And then I had a lot of support here in the studio, especially from one of my employees, Nina, who was just amazing organizing everything. Because there's a lot of organization with the book, too. There's lots of images. Every image needs credit. It's a lot.
Oh, yeah. That is a lot. Work. Yeah.
But in the end, it came out, and I'm so proud of it. And I'm traveling. Well, I'm traveling the country and the world. I just got invited to Russia to do it, and other places where I talk about color in a very unique way. Everybody has a different approach to color, and I have one too. So it's personal, and yet it inspires others to be personal with theirs as well. And so what I did just a few weeks ago was launch a color analysis test based on these 10 palettes in the book. And anybody can do it. You can just go on my website. It's free. It's 18 questions you answer online. And at the end, you will get a result of what color world or color worlds might be ones you should really consider using for your interiors.
So I did the test. It's pretty, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and it's funny because I wrote it down, but I did it like 2 weeks ago, and now I'm sitting here as you're talking. I'm like, where did I write down what my results were? But you probably know. One was Whisper Winds or something.
Whisper. Yeah.
Whisper. The other one, so that was like beiges and neutrals, and the other one was a more white palette. If you say what it was, I might remember what it was called. And then the other palette, interestingly, was like oceans and blues and things like that.
Waterside. Oh, right. You got Whisper and Waterside. Okay, so I can give you a little analysis.
Go ahead.
So, and let me just preface this by saying, the results may surprise people. They may not be colors they're already using. There may not be colors they would prefer. The whole approach here is what could be beneficial for them. So it's the idea of using color as a tool. So when you tell me that you got Whisper and Waterside, what I would say to you, and without knowing you, and I don't know you, is Waterside is really for grounding, and Whispers for calming. And so it's very important for you, perhaps, in your interiors, based on your crazy, hectic day working in, all your beautiful curtains and making and all, and dealing with clients all day, is to come home to a space that's very calming but grounding at the same time. So if you were to just get Whisper, that can sometimes be too ethereal, like you're floating too much and you need some grounding. And Waterside, the balance of those would give you that. Other people, like I get Alchemy and Fragrant Woods every time I take the test, and that makes total sense for me. Alchemy are the warm metal golds, and they doesn't mean you should fill your home with gold, but it means have a little bit of that, because that really draws out creativity and inspiration. And Fragrant Woods is rooting in nature, and I live a very urban existence. I have a loft in Chelsea, my office is in Chelsea, my kids go to school here, we don't have the house in the Hamptons, so we are here. And Fragrant Woods is my way of rooting to nature in my home. So there are reasons behind this. I work with a psychologist for 6 months on this test. This is not a kind of, silly thing. This is something to be taken seriously, but the end message is find the color or colors that are right for you and for your soul, and to allow you to be the best you can be in your space, and be open to colors that you may not typically have considered.
Well, and you're exactly right, because I don't think I've ever used the color blue in anything that I've ever done, especially not the palette that presents itself in Waterside. Do you know what I mean? And so it was very interesting to me, because I looked at it and I went, what? But I hear and understand now. You're not asking the questions to get to the color that I look at that appeals to me. You're getting to the colors that will benefit me emotionally, spiritually, in as a subliminal person coming back, right? You're saying
exactly. And when you come back from your workday, Waterside, there are other colors that are grounding. Fragrant Woods is also grounding color, but Waterside is there are no surprises. It's very dependable. It's very comforting. It's very steady. It's like your best friend.
Interesting. The questions were interesting too, because the questions are all. Now I understand, by the way. And when I was taking the test, I'm like, what vacation would I like to be on? And, and things like that. What job would I most like to have? It's interesting. I was like, what does this have to do with color?
Right. But it has to do with exactly, you summed it up beautifully, better than I even, that it's spiritually how it will, innately affect you in a positive way. Yeah. So this book has just sort of taken on a life of its own, and it's got legs. And then I'm also, because of it, I've been asked to moderate a panel for Art Digest's design show on color. So all of a sudden, it's putting me in a world where I can not just talk about product, but I can talk about color, which is probably my favorite thing to talk about.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I did notice that you were going to be moderating that panel, and it's March 23rd. I'm just, what's today? March 14th. I don't know if the show will be up before or after that on the top of my head, but one of the members of that panel is Charles Pavarini, and him and I go back years. I was with him yesterday in the city.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yes, okay. We are getting ready. He was honored to be be invited to do Kips Bay again. And so I'm going to be
Right.
doing some work for him with this Kips Bay room. And I've known him for a long time, love him, and love, love, love him. So.
Well, he's someone I have admired forever, but and he's a client, but I've never met him, so I'm really excited to meet him.
He's
And-
seriously, I mean, I just can't. He's just one of the most genuine, kindest souls on the planet, truly.
I bet.
Yeah, yeah.
So the book is pretty exciting, and I think that there's more to come in that world for me, but I'm not sure yet where or how or what form it takes, but there's something brewing.
That's exciting. So you just feel it in yourself. It's not that you're being, I can't let the cat out of the bag. You just are like, something's happening. I'm aware of a current and, sort of an energy in me and around me, right?
Yep.
I love it.
Yeah.
So that'll be really interesting when it presents itself to you what it is, when you get the moment where you say, oh, this is my next thing. And then you're going to have another awesome story about it, I'm certain.
Yeah.
This has been so much fun, Lori, because not only is the body of work that you have given all of us and shared your talent with all of us. And we've all, I don't think there's probably not a designer listening that hasn't used one of your products in some way, in some fashion on one of their projects. And so that itself is a huge gift to all of us. But to have you come here and share these intimate stories of both the wins and the scary parts and the hard parts is also such a gift to us, because it's important for all of us to recognize that it isn't just sitting in white, pretty offices and everything just clicking and, I'll take 2 more of this universe, please.
No, right, exactly. No,
That's it. So it's a lot of hard work and a lot of
is.
trusting. It sounds like to me, trusting in yourself and knowing inside, deep inside, that whatever is happening outside, that there's a belief in what you're capable of doing. And I love that that seems to be the big message from the conversation. I'm so grateful for it. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you. Thank you so much for including me in your great podcast.
All right, I just want to say, if you're new to the show, I mentioned a couple of previous episodes, and you may want to go back and listen to them for context on the conversation. So Mulaney B was episode 14, and Vanessa De Leon was 18, and Charles Pavarini was episode 16. And also, as a side note, the AD show is this Friday, March 23rd, if you're listening to this in real time on March 21st, 2018. So at 3 o'clock, Lori will be leading the panel discussion called Seeing the World Through Colored Glasses. So you can meet Lori and you can meet Charles. And if you do, please tell them that you heard about them from the podcast. Okay? Now, let's talk about the message here that Lori's conversation really hammered home for us, right? Here's what I'm thinking it is. You don't always have to know what you're doing. You don't always have to know how something is going to work out. And you don't always have to have the answers. But what do you have to do? What do you have to have? You have to believe in yourself. That's what Lori did. She didn't always know. Matter of fact, she didn't even know where the darn show in France was, right? Taking that train an hour each day at the crack of dawn in order to get to that show. But she believed in herself and she followed her gut. And that's the thing about it, right? The other thing is that you have to know what you want and you have to be able to ask for it, right? You have to dream big. You have to write it down. You have to put it on a vision board. Heck, you could even put it in a purple box. But then when you identify it, ask, pitch it to an editor, pitch it to a new boss, pitch it to a client. Just do the asking. What's the worst that could happen? I'm going to tell you what, the worst that can happen isn't that you get a no. The worst that can happen is that you never get the chance because you didn't try, because you didn't ask. That's actually the worst that could happen. So no is okay. Learn to be okay with no. It's just like Lori's attempts at getting the book written and published. No was actually good along the way. It was actually the right thing along the way. And again, her lesson, the thing to learn from her is that she kept asking. She kept going back. She didn't take the no and like go down into a puddle on the floor. She kept going back. And what happened when she kept going back and kept going for what she wanted? It led to the yes, and the yes was connected with the right book. This book that she's so proud of and that she loves and that she's sharing with us. You could hear it in her voice, couldn't you? How proud she is of it. I was so happy for her listening to her describe it. So learn to be okay with going for it. Learn to be okay with hearing no. Learn to be okay with messing up, but never, ever learn to be okay without trying. Okay? And over if necessary. All right. So I just want to say that I really appreciate your joining me today. I love doing this with you and for you. And if you are going to High Point, please come to the party on April 16th. I may be doing another event there. It's not exactly certain yet. But in order to know, because it probably will get established too late for recording, please be on my email list. Text the word Design Biz, DESIGNBIZ, to the number 444-999, because the email will always have the updated information. Okay. And then lastly, reminder that the second meeting of Coffee Talk with Deborah Rosenberg of Damari Design and Vegan Design.org is happening this Friday, March 23rd, okay, 2018. And this month, they are going to talk about episode number 60 with Krista Cooper. If you haven't heard about this yet, Deborah Rosenberg of Damari Design has started a coffee talk for designers who want to get together and talk about the podcast episodes, the lessons in the podcast episodes. And Deborah Rosenberg is an accomplished 25-plus year interior designer with a very successful firm. So it's sort of like a masterclass. I mean, I'm just going to say, great opportunity for you. And this particular Friday, the episode is, as I said, discussing episode number 60 with Krista Cooper. So you're going to want to listen to that first, okay? And the thing about this episode is Krista teaches how you first identify how much money you want to make in your interior design firm this year. And then with that information, she helps you figure out how to structure your week, your month, and your year so that you can achieve your financial goal. Okay? So if you want to be in on this discussion, it's a live discussion via Zoom. So it's interactive. It's absolutely free. It is limited to a certain amount of interior designers. And to be in on it, you need to just email hello@vegandesign.org. hello@vegandesign.org. And Deborah would like for you to put in the subject line, Luann Fan Club. All right. They get a lot of emails there. And this way she knows that can be siphoned off to the right place so that you get the link that you need in order to get in on the group. All righty. So seriously, everybody, thank you for showing up, for listening, for the emails that you send me, for the encouragement and the feedback that you give me. I value and I appreciate it very, 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 very much. All righty. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do today? Think about something. Take some action. All righty? Go out there today and decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.